Thank you very much, and thank you for a very well introduction. And I am very grateful to be here and to participate in this conference, especially because I had the opportunity as well to hear about numerous topics and that are covered by very good experts, by members of the academia. And I might say that I learned a lot, and I'm going to continue learning. As you said, the European integrations should include young people, and we are going to try and do our best to participate in this narrative. So my presentation, or the topic of my presentation, actually treats the EU energy policy from perspective of a candidate country, EU candidate country, meaning my country, the Republic of Serbia. What I wanted to emphasize in the beginning is that I'm going to, in order to learn to talk in a time frame, I'm going to also turn on the clock so I can have 20 minutes and to respect those 20 minutes. My experience about the perspective of the Republic of Serbia towards the EU integrations is the perspective from the inside, in a way, because prior working in the academia and working at the university, I was involved in the EU negotiation process from the side of the state of the government of the Republic of Serbia, and I was actually involved in the Ministry of European Integrations dealing with Chapter 15, meaning with energy policy. So I'm going to try to use both of sides, meaning practice and theory, and to present to you what it means for the Republic of Serbia, what it means to be involved in the EU integrations, what it means to face all the challenges that are important, especially with special emphasis on the energy policy, and what are the key challenges for the Republic of Serbia for the future, having in mind the crisis that we have mentioned from the very, very beginning of this conference, and of course the crisis that could be called, as Jean-Claude Juncker once told, a polycrisis. So do I use this as a slide so I can change the slide? This, yeah? Yeah, good. So you already know my name. I'm going to start with a brief overview, what I'm going to present today. So few introductory remarks about the EU energy policy, although we had the honor to hear today in the morning session a little bit more about that, and I will have the honor to hear three of my colleagues who are already in the EU, so I'm not going to, take the floor and talk about the EU energy policy, but I'm going to talk about how the Serbia sees the EU energy policy. Then I'm going to proceed to the EU overall overview of the EU integrations of the Republic of Serbia, meaning an ongoing process. We had good comparisons today. Several times it was mentioned that I think in the previous panel that the EU integration process is like riding a bicycle. So I'm going to show you how Serbia tries to ride a bicycle of the EU integration process as a candidate country. Then fast forward to negotiation chapter 15 and harmonization of the Serbian legislations with the EU acquis in that specific chapter, meaning in EU energy policy. And then I'm going to talk about the Serbian progress in the energy policy, of course, from three perspectives. This is where I made a mistake here. I said from the perspective of the EU Commission and Energy Community, but also from the perspective of Serbian state authorities, meaning Ministry of Mining and Energy. And then at the end, I'm going to underline key challenges that the Republic of Serbia as a candidate country is facing. So, introductory remarks. Firstly, and we mentioned it today, and I wanted to make kind of a liaison, as the French would say, with the European Union. I would say the field of energy, the field of energy law and energy policy is from the beginning involved in the EU integration. And as we mentioned today, for example, the first European community itself arose from the European coal and steel community, which indicated that some forms of energy were at the beginning present in the first idea of the European integration. Secondly, energy belongs, of course, to one of the most important cooperation policies that exists in the European Union, because it is a mixture not only of the energy law of the European Union, but it involves economics as well, and most importantly, as we have seen in the last 2 years, politics and international relations. So energy policy is undoubtedly an area at the very center of development of EU policies. The development of energy sector was I would say, in a way difficult, especially in the Central Eastern European countries, with, of course, special emphasis on the Western Balkans countries, because it was, in our case, slowed down primarily because of the large numbers of interested entities, of the large, complete involvement of the state, and because it was, I would say, it was a metaphor for state sovereignty. And now we face even more challenges that my colleagues will also underline, meaning that we have to deal with crisis. Secondly, we have to deal with rapid development of technologies, and of course with application of those technologies, because as we all know, and we are lawyers, it is not only important to bring upon a law or a legislation, the more important thing is to implement it properly. So again, one also important aspect that I would underline is the presence of the energy community. Why? Because from the very beginning, the Republic of Serbia was a signatory side of the Treaty on the Energy Community in 2005, and it was brought upon on the initiative of the European Commission and the European Union. So the establishment of energy community was firstly, had the emphasis on the field of electricity and then on the natural gas. And here I mention, and I don't want to, of course, lose my time on mentioning which were the first directives that were brought and that represented the first steps towards creating an internal electricity market and then towards creating an internal market on natural gas. But I would mention, because when we teach about the European Union legislation and legislative acts, we start primarily from the treaties. And then I would like to mention the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, i.e. the Article 194, because that article sets out the goals that the energy policies of the European Union should pursue, namely ensuring the functioning of the energy market, achieving existence of security of energy, which is the pressing issue today, not only in the European Union, but in the world. And then, of course, afterwards, the promotion of energy efficiency and energy saving and development of renewable forms, which for Serbia is, you will see later, a huge challenge. Why do I mention that article? Because when we are harmonizing with the EU law, we are not harmonizing only with the secondary legislation, meaning with the directives and regulations of the European Union. We are harmonizing with the primary legislation as well, meaning the treaty. So now I come to Serbia. So the Serbia, this is something that my Professor Rakić already spoke about, the EU integration path of the Republic of Serbia, but I will just mention few points, turning points for the Republic of Serbia on its EU integration path that were and that tackle the energy policy as well. So as it was mentioned today, the SAA process, meaning the stabilization and association process, began at the beginning of 21st century, meaning at 2000. Year 2000 was when this principle was established. Some of you probably heard this Thessaloniki Regatta principle. That principle was established at the Thessaloniki summit, where it was said that every Western Balkan country that is going to become a candidate country and afterwards that is going to enter the European Union will enter like a boat regatta, meaning one by one. And it started with Croatia, and it was expected to continue with other Western Balkan countries. And mind you, it was set in 2004. So now we're in 2023, and after Croatia, neither of the Balkan countries entered the European Union. But those were the other issues that were tackled today and yesterday that actually had, I would say, an influence on the negotiation process. Afterwards, the Stabilization and Association Agreement that was signed, it took a long time to be ratified, and today it was mentioned as well that it took several years to be ratified, and having Lithuania as the last country to ratify this agreement. And the agreement was, of course, between the countries of the European Union, the European Community, and the Republic of Serbia. In 2012, the Republic of Serbia became a candidate country, and in 2014, the negotiations were open, meaning that when you open the negotiations, most most of you know, you open it at the first intergovernmental conference when all the screening reports are already done. And when we say screening reports, this is very important because here the European Commission actually established what were the key points and key challenges in each chapter. And today Professor Vasiljevic as well mentioned which were the chapters. Of course, the Republic of Serbia as well had 35 chapters, and chapter 15 is dedicated to energy policy. What is as well, I would like to mention what is as well, I would say specific for us is the chapter 35, which is not the same, the content of that chapter is not the same in any other country that entered the European Union prior Serbia or any other country that is negotiating to enter the European Union. And then, and of course, why do I mention that? Because the energy policy, chapter 15, is closely related to chapter 34 because everything that tackles electricity and gas and that goes to Kosovo is also dealt with in 2 chapters, meaning it is even more complex and even multi-layered problem that needs to be solved on the level of the European Union on the one side and on the other side of the Republic of Serbia. So for each chapter's benchmark was sent, of course, and they were set, you have opening benchmarks, interim benchmark, and closing benchmark. And this is even more difficult because all of you who deal with European integrations know that every time when you open a chapter and you think you closed it, this is a chapter that is closed, but not permanently closed. It could be always reopened until the end of the negotiations. And this is the key, of course, for every, I would say, every progress report that is done within the negotiation process. And what I also must mention regarding the I would say, progress in the Republic of Serbia is this imbalance clause. So you have chapter 15 that deals with energy, but that chapter is after the entry of Croatia connected to advancement and to advancement in any other chapter, especially chapter 23 and 24, meaning fight against corruption, rule of law, setting corporations and everything in accordance with the law and legislation, etc. So I would say that chapter 15, when it comes to the energy policy of the Republic of Serbia, is a very complex process that is being dealt with in the previous decade. And now I would just show you what is a legal basis for the to tackle the energy policy and the advancement of Serbia in the energy policy in the EU integration process. Firstly, it is the Stabilization and Association Agreement that was mentioned today, and the Stabilization and Association Agreement devotes several provisions to the field of energy, but what it does, it also, I would say, how do I say, underlines the importance of the EU acquis and the energy community in the whole process of the European integrations. So in Article 109, and I won't now read it because we don't have a lot of time, but it is important, the energy policy set and the energy cooperation and the harmonization of the Serbian legislation with the energy policy is set. But this is just the basics, because we need to harmonize the whole legislation in the energy policy and to implement it properly in order to tackle what was here underlined, the benchmarks, the most problematic parts of the alignment with the energy policy. With the first one starts with the legal alignment with the EU acquis as regards, firstly, mandatory oil stocks. Secondly, we need to align with internal energy market, including, and this was, I cannot stress to you enough how many times it was mentioned by the European Commission, unbundling of all energy utilities in line with one of the models in the acquis, meaning unbundling of all enterprises that needs to be unbundled and needs to be set in accordance with the European Union acquis, as, for example, Gastrans, Jugorosgas, etc. And thirdly, to align with energy efficiency and renewables acquis, because, as I already told you, that is one of the one of the biggest challenges for us. So now I would like to mention that As I was saying about that we have chapters. Now, what also happens with the Western Balkan countries is the methodology revises. And then the methodology now is completely different, meaning that now we have clusters. And now instead of opening one chapter per chapter, now you're opening a cluster. And of course, energy was, as it should be, put in the cluster 4, green agenda and sustainable connectivity, meaning that when you cannot close or temporarily even close the cluster 4 if you don't tackle all 4 chapters at once, and then you can temporarily close and say, okay, we had a good, I would say a good mark, or we had some progress in this cluster. Also, I would like to mention that we have 6 clusters and only 2 are open right now, and one of them is this one, meaning that all 4 chapters are open. Also, energy policy, it was open in 2021, at the end of 2021, and that was the last chapter ever opened in the negotiation history of the Republic of Serbia. So hopefully we will open more, but I won't tackle that topic now. Main challenges for Chapter 15, meaning chapter dealing with energy policy. I wanted to show you what were the demands from the European Union and what Serbia needs to do. So that's why I put 2 sides, but I will focus only what is the Serbian's obligation. Obligation of the Republic of Serbia, of course, to align, as I already mentioned, the energy sector with the EU standards, but also, and this is something that we're dealing a year per year, we are not liberalizing energy market, and we are not at all enhancing our, market efficiency, and we are very dependent. We depend, I think, more than 85%. Yeah, only 50% we can provide from our own sources, which I will tackle later. So main challenges for Serbia are alignment with the EU acquis, market liberalization and competition, energy efficiency and renewable energy, infrastructure development and interconnections. I will deal with the interconnection part because this is something that we're dealing right now with Bulgaria, environmental protection, and finally financing and investment. And all of you who went through the negotiation process know about the EPA funds, and this is the number 6 is something where the European Commission is very much involved through the EPA funds. So this is kind of a brief overview of Serbian legislation. This was updated. The first 2 that are in red are most important laws that we worked in the ministry for, I think, 8 years prior the start of the negotiations, and then we had the amendments 2 times in order to harmonize energy law with the 2nd package and then with the 3rd energy package. So amending and updating legislation was done the last time in 2022 and 2023. The first one is the energy law that we amended in 2023, and the second was Serbia's law on the use of renewable sources of energy, which was done in April 2023. And in June 2023, we amended in our National Assembly the law on energy. And just for the last 4 minutes, as I see I will now tell you about the progress report of the European Commission and the progress report of the Energy Community regarding Serbia. So I will draw your attention just to the first sentence here, where it says, limited progress has been made, particularly regarding last year's recommendations, meaning that we succeeded, I would say, 20% in achieving some moderate progress. And one of the most important things that they accentuate all the time is, of course, finalizing, as I already mentioned you at the beginning, unbundling of the gas sector. Secondly, we need to liberalize our market and to provide third-party access to all gas entry points, and we need to decrease our energy dependence on Russia, in line, of course, with the European Union Repower EU communication, which was brought upon in 2020. Secondly, I will not bother you with this, but I will just like to, I would say, emphasize a progress that has been made, and that is that after 10 years of stallment, we started building this, or we restarted building the EU-funded gas interconnector between Serbia and Bulgaria in January 2022, and it is expected that it would be finalized in 2024. I would guess, if you ask me, based on my experience, 2024 is very optimistic view of building and finalizing gas interconnector between Serbia and Bulgaria. Then, just to skip this part, maybe one day I will continue. I will write it in my paper, don't worry. You'll have the opportunity to read it. These were the responses of Ministry of Mining and Energies regarding the key challenges. One of the things that I will draw your attention to is that the last public enterprise that was built was more than 3 decades ago in 1991 for the production of electricity. So this is why I draw you a line when we need to resort to import, because we resort to importing electricity in so many situations, and we need to, of course, funding in order to invest in building infrastructure. Of course, as I already mentioned, I said 15%, but now in 2022, it said that we provide only 10% of our needs from domestic production. So everything else through import from the Russian Federation. And finally, these were the opinions of the energy communities given in every sector that tackles energy policy. What I draw attention to you is also the cases that we have before the energy community that tackle, of course, unbundling, electricity with Kosovo Coast Company, and environment. So state of energy sector reforms, as you can see, we had the moderate progress, and Serbia's, good track record is now a bit stalled because, we were overshadowed by lack of progress on several crucial issues. I will talk about it more, of course, when I read it. And I will just draw your attention to the colors. Just look of the color where the number of green colors. This is what was approved regarding the clean energy package. Purple is what is in the plan and the progress. And of course, the only one that is finalized is the blue one. So we only finalize one part of our clean energy package transposition and, of course, alignment with the EU acquis in that part. Okay, I'll skip to that. And then, again, key recommendation for the harmonization with the EU acquis, meaning with the EU energy policy, is, of course, full unbundling of the transmission system operator, and then dealing with the transmission system operator with Kosovo, which is dealt before the authorities of the energy community. Secondly, to address lack of proper, again, in the gas sector, unbundling and certification of gas transmission operators, and to grant third-party access where at the Horgoš interconnection point without delay, which we are delaying. This is from 2022, so we are still delaying. To boost regional gas market integration, here we had the progress, so we are working on this interconnector. And when we're working on that, we're working in line with the storage regulation of the European Union in 2022 that was brought upon. And 3 key issues for the end. This is renewable energy, energy efficiency, and environment. Those recommendations I could not stress anymore because this is something that the Republic of Serbia does not even cope to deal with because we're dealing with something that we had as a heritage from the previous and for the past issues in the ex-Yugoslavia. So I try to skip some parts in order to respect the time. Hopefully, if you have any more questions, I'm here, and thank you once again for the opportunity to talk before you and for your attention. Thank you once again.